From the estimated 40 million deaths unleashed by Genghis Khan's cavalry across 2 continents, to the single gunshot that ended the world's most wanted terrorist in Pakistan, to the 80,000 human hearts torn from living prisoners atop Aztec pyramids. This is the story of the 12 deadliest military units in human history. Genghis Khan's Mongol warriors. In the 13th century, Genghis Khan commanded what became the most lethal war machine of the Middle Ages. His Mongol armies rode small but powerful steppe horses and wielded devastating composite bows. These nomadic fighters carved a path of destruction from China to Eastern Europe. Their methods were revolutionary. Fake retreats that lured enemies into traps, lightning-fast cavalry maneuvers that surrounded entire armies, sudden sieges, and absolute total war. Cities that resisted were annihilated. Others surrendered instantly, hoping to survive. Historians estimate the Mongol campaigns caused the deaths of around 40 million people. In 1258, during the sack of Baghdad, up to 2 million civilians were slaughtered in a matter of days. In many cases, cities surrendered without a single arrow being fired, simply because word spread that the Mongols were coming. This terror was intentional. Genghis Khan understood that fear was a weapon. Skulls were stacked into towers. Enemy leaders were wrapped alive in carpets and crushed beneath horses. Tales of brutality raced ahead of the army itself, shattering morale before battles even began. "I am the punishment of God," Genghis Khan reportedly said. And to much of the medieval world, his warriors truly were. The Assyrian army. Between 900 and 600 BC, the Assyrians ruled the Middle East with the world's first standing professional army. Rising from Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, they revolutionized warfare through mass-produced iron weapons, heavy cavalry, and siege engines capable of tearing down ancient city walls. But their true power came from fear. Captured enemies were skinned alive, their hides nailed to city walls as warnings. Royal inscriptions proudly recorded the destruction. One inscription boasts that King Sennacherib destroyed 89 fortified cities and 820 villages in a single campaign, deporting 28,000 prisoners at once. After victories, pyramids of severed heads and pillars of skulls were erected. The message was clear. Resistance meant obliteration. This calculated terror worked. Entire cities surrendered without battle to avoid the fate of those who defied Assyria. Temples were burned, populations relocated, and even enemy gods were humiliated. This wasn't random cruelty. It was terror refined into a military system. Alexander the Great's Macedonian Phalanx. In the 4th century BC, Alexander commanded one of the most feared fighting forces of the ancient world. At its core stood the Macedonian Phalanx elite heavy infantry, armed with the sarissa, a spear measuring up to 6 meters long. Packed shoulder to shoulder in formation 16 ranks deep, the Phalanx advanced like a living wall of spikes, killing enemies before they could strike back. Paired with elite cavalry, Alexander perfected the hammer and anvil tactic. The Phalanx pinned the enemy in place, while cavalry smashed into their flanks. In less than 10 years, Alexander destroyed the massive Persian Empire. At the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC, his army faced Persian forces several times larger. Only around 100 Macedonians were killed, while Persian losses numbered in the tens of thousands. Alexander never lost a battle. In just 8 years, his army marched over 20,000 kilometers, conquering territory stretching from Egypt to India. But tactics alone don't explain his success. Alexander inspired near unbreakable loyalty. According to legend, when his army ran out of water while crossing the desert, his soldiers offered him the last drops they had ready to die for him without hesitation. Alexander poured the water onto the sand, choosing to suffer alongside his men rather than drink alone. That moment sealed their loyalty. With soldiers who revered him as a living demigod and refused to take even a single step backward, the Macedonian Phalanx became almost unstoppable. Attila's Huns. In the 5th century, Attila unleashed the Huns across a crumbling Roman world. These nomadic warriors perfected mounted archery, firing deadly arrows while charging at full speed. Short, battle-hardened, and terrifying in appearance, Hunnic warriors slashed the cheeks of infants to prevent beard growth and accentuate scars marks meant to inspire fear. Romans and Germanic tribes alike trembled at their approach. Under Attila's command, Central Europe was ravaged. Cities were burned or stripped bare, and entire populations were slaughtered without mercy. At the Battle of the Catalonian Plains in 451 AD, historical sources claim up to 160,000 people died in a single day. Attila relied on speed and psychological warfare. His armies struck without warning, appearing where no one expected them. During brutal marches, legends say his warriors drank blood from their own horses to survive. One saying captured his legacy perfectly: where Attila's horse steps, grass never grows again. His punishments were horrific. Traitors were impaled or crucified as warnings. Though Attila died before Rome itself collapsed, for a brief moment his Huns forced the civilized world to its knees, earning him apocalyptic titles that still echo through history. The Order of Assassins. From the 11th to the 13th century, the Hashashin, an Islamic assassin sect, spread fear across the medieval world. Crusader leaders, caliphs, and sultans all knew their name. Founded by Hassan-I Sabah at the mountain fortress of Alamet in Persia, they turned assassination into a precise political weapon. Rather than mass armies, they deployed highly trained infiltrators. These agents struck with daggers, often in public places, killing their targets in front of guards who were powerless to stop them. The very word assassin comes from this group. Over nearly 2 centuries, they eliminated hundreds of high-value figures: 3 caliphs, numerous crusader commanders, and most famously, Conrad of Montferrat, King of Jerusalem, stabbed in 1192 by assassins disguised as monks. No ruler felt safe, not even Saladin. Legend claims he agreed to negotiate peace only after waking to find a dagger planted beside his pillow, silently proving the assassins could reach him whenever they wished. Ninjas of feudal Japan. Between the 15th and 16th centuries, ninjas, also known as shinobi, became masters of espionage, sabotage, and targeted killing. Originating from regions like Iga and Koga, they operated as mercenaries during Japan's violent civil wars, hired by feudal lords for covert missions. Clad in camouflaged clothing, they slipped into enemy fortresses, poisoned water supplies, sabotaged weapons caches, set fires, and eliminated key figures with precision. Ninjas pioneered unconventional tools, throwing stars, smoke bombs, and barrels of gunpowder used to breach gates. Their training began in childhood and was relentless martial arts: climbing, swimming, poison crafting, and resistance to torture. In 1570, ninja Sujitoni Zinjbo ambushed warlord Oda Nobunaga with an arquebus from 20 meters away. One shot grazed Nobunaga. The other killed his bodyguard. Over time, myth eclipsed reality. Many believed ninjas could become invisible, or that drawing a blade without shedding blood brought dishonor. In truth, it was their discipline and unorthodox tactics that built a fearsome reputation beyond written records. Nobunaga eventually struck back. In 1581, he invaded Iga and wiped out entire ninja communities in a brutal crackdown: the Ottoman Janissaries. From the 14th to the 19th century, the Janissaries stood as the elite shock troops of the Ottoman Empire. Created through the Devshirme system, Christian boys from the Balkans were taken from their families, converted to Islam, and subjected to extreme military training, forging absolute loyalty to the Sultan. Easily identified by their distinctive uniforms and tall white hats, they were pioneers in large-scale firearm warfare. In 1453, they spearheaded the assault on Constantinople, finally breaching its walls after a 53-day siege. The city's fall left 4,000 dead and over 50,000 enslaved, ending the Eastern Roman Empire. At the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, Janissary musket fire annihilated Hungarian heavy cavalry in under 2 hours. The Hungarian king was killed, along with roughly 20,000 soldiers. But their strength eventually became a liability. Resistant to modernization, the Janissaries turned against reform. In 1826, Sultan Mahmud II ordered their destruction in what became known as the Auspicious Incident. Artillery was turned on their barracks, killing thousands of elite soldiers in mere hours. The once invincible unit was erased by the empire it had served. The Spanish conquistadors. In the 16th century, small groups of Spanish conquistadors shattered entire civilizations in the Americas. Armed with steel blades, arquebuses, and horses, technologies unknown to indigenous peoples, men like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro brought down the Aztec and Inca empires with astonishingly small forces. In 1519, Cortés landed in Mexico with just 600 men. 2 years later, Tenochtitlan fell after a devastating siege. Tens of thousands of Aztecs were killed, with chroniclers describing up to 100,000 corpses filling the streets. In 1532, Pizarro ambushed Inca Emperor Atahualpa. With only 168 soldiers, he massacred the imperial guard, captured the emperor, and triggered the collapse of an empire that ruled millions. But the deadliest weapon wasn't Spanish steel, it was disease. Smallpox and measles ravaged populations with no immunity. Between 1519 and 1600, Mexico's population collapsed from 20 million to just 2 million, a staggering 90% decline. Courts once gazed upon Tenochtitlan, a city larger than any in Europe, and within 2 years reduced it to ashes. With less than 1% of the population, the Spanish dominated the remaining 99%. The Aztec Jaguar warriors. Between the 5th and 16th centuries, the Aztec Aztec Jaguar warriors stood among the most elite fighters of the Aztec Empire. Draped in jaguar pelts and vivid ceremonial armor, they entered battle looking as fearsome as the predator they imitated. Their signature weapon was the Nacuahuitl, a wooden sword club edged with razor-sharp obsidian blades. Spanish chroniclers described astonishing feat stories of warriors decapitating horses with a single swing. To earn jaguar status, a fighter had to capture at least 20 enemies alive in battle, a requirement that rewarded reckless bravery and brutal close combat. Those captives were marched to the tops of pyramids, where priests tore out their still-beating hearts as offerings to the gods. During the rededication of the Great Temple in 1487, Aztec sources claim 80,400 prisoners were sacrificed over 4 days, an unbroken procession, climbing 114 steps toward death. This focus on capturing rather than killing, however, became a weakness. The Spanish conquistadors exploited it, killing from a distance with arquebuses and steel weapons. Even so, during the Night of Sorrows in 1520, Jaguar warriors inflicted devastating losses on Spanish troops retreating from Tenochtitlan. Imagine the terror felt by Cortés' men, hundreds of warriors emerging from the morning mist, clad in jaguar skins, roaring like beasts, wielding obsidian blades capable of severing a horse's head. Shaka Zulu impis. In early 19th century southern Africa, one of the deadliest fighting forces on the continent arose under King Shaka Zulu. The Zulu impis transformed warfare through radical innovation. Shaka replaced throwing spears with the Iklua, a short stabbing spear designed for brutal close combat, and introduced larger shields for aggressive formations. Warriors were organized by age into permanent regiments and drilled under relentless discipline. Training was merciless. Recruits ran barefoot up to 50 kilometers a day across thorn-filled terrain to harden their feet and build endurance. Cowardice was not tolerated. Entire units were executed for retreating. Shaka's famous buffalo horns formation a central force, pinning the enemy while two flanks enveloped them, proved devastating. At the Battle of Isandlwana in 1879, around 20,000 Zulu warriors overwhelmed 1,300 heavily armed British troops, one of the worst defeats ever inflicted on a European army by indigenous forces. The Gurkhas of Nepal. Hailing from the Himalayan foothills, the Gurkhas built a fearsome reputation first as enemies and later as elite allies of the British Army. Their motto says everything. Better to die than live as a coward. They carried with them centuries-old martial traditions and their iconic weapon, the kukri, a curved, heavy-bladed knife designed for devastating close combat. In battle, Gurkhas earned renown as relentless fighters who never backed down. During the World Wars, 250,000 Gurkhas served the British Empire, earning 26 Victoria Crosses for extraordinary bravery. One legendary account comes from Burma in 1945 when Lachaman Gurung, his right hand blown off by a grenade, held his position alone against 200 Japanese soldiers, killing 31 and fighting until dawn. In the Falklands War of 1982, Argentine troops reportedly surrendered simply upon learning that Gurkhas were advancing. The kukri itself carries legend once drawn and must taste blood before returning to its sheath. While romanticized, the myth reflects the fear surrounding these warriors. Selection remains brutal. Thousands compete each year for only a few hundred spots, enduring extreme physical and mental trials. Since 1815, after being impressed fighting against them, the British chose to recruit the Gurkhas rather than face them again. The U.S. Navy SEALs. In modern warfare, few units rival the reputation of the U.S. Navy SEALs. Trained to operate across sea, air, and land, they represent the highest level of special operations capability. With only about 2,500 active operators, SEALs are selected from tens of thousands of candidates through one of the harshest selection processes on Earth. The attrition rate reaches 75 to 80%. Only 1 in 4 makes it through. On May 2, 2011, a team of 23 SEALs infiltrated Pakistan undetected and killed Osama bin Laden inside his fortified compound, ending a nearly decade-long manhunt. In just 40 minutes, they eliminated the target, secured intelligence, and escaped without casualties, an operation that stunned the world. They also carried out the dramatic 2009 rescue of Captain Richard Phillips from Somali pirates. As waves rocked the boat, 3 SEAL snipers fired simultaneously, killing all 3 pirates in perfect coordination. Their training is as unforgiving as their missions. Hell Week pushes candidates to 5 days without sleep, constant physical exertion, freezing Pacific waters, log carries, and endless march through sand. By the end, many hallucinate or suffer hypothermia. Despite advanced weapons and technology, the SEAL ethos remains primal. Courage, trust, and surprise. They strike at dawn emerging from the sea or dropping from the sky. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay tuned. From Viking runes carved into the Hagia Sophia by northern warriors serving Byzantine emperors, to the savage cry of "Awaken Iron," echoing through the Catalan mountains, to the 147 Swiss guards slaughtered on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica defending the Pope. These are the 12 historic special forces of Europe.